Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning, Falcon fans. Hopefully, you guys are doing okay and all is well, and I can be heard. Today is Monday, June 3rd, and welcome to episode 2 of my weekly or daily Falcons podcast. And this morning, probably for about 30 minutes, going to talk a little Falcons with you. Hopefully, we can have a couple of people join. And if not, hopefully, hey, you guys can enjoy it later on today. Either way, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's program. So, with that being said, let's talk about what's going on with your Falcons. So, number one, first and foremost, saw a few articles over the weekend. Number one, former Falcons that are still unsigned. So I thought this was interesting. Like, did we make some mistakes? Did we, or were we savvy in regards to people that we did not re-sign or folks that are still out there? So I, for one, thought that was interesting. Also, before we get started, please like and subscribe. You can go to terrywilson4myATLsports1 on YouTube and like and subscribe. We're going to probably do this every day from 8 a.m. to maybe 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. Just, I don't know. Depends on how it goes. But that's where you can reach me. Again, please do not forget to like and subscribe. So, former Falcons still unsigned. Let's talk about it. We've got Keanu Neal, safety, went to the Falcons in his rookie year, went to the Super Bowl 2016. Believe it was hurt in 2018 and 2019. And the last couple of years, he kind of danced around. I think he was with Atlanta, then the Dallas Cowboys, then a few other teams, and to this point has been unsigned. Now, if you know Keanu, you know he is not your prototypical. Well, he's kind of a hybrid between a safety and a linebacker. I wouldn't say he's the best coverage guy, but he's definitely a thumper. I guess the question is, at this point, do the Falcons have any use for him? And some of you may say, well, between he and Richie Grant, I don't know. But I don't know that Keanu is still a starter at this point. He could be. I'm not saying he can't. I don't play the game. I don't strap on the uniform. So, maybe somebody will pay him. But to this point, he's been unsigned. And I guess the question is, do the Falcons have a use for him on their roster at this time? For now, I'm going to say no, we don't. We've got Richie Grant. We've got the new safety McCullum. And I just don't feel at this point that, he would necessarily fit into our plans. And then, I don't know what the contract you'd sign him for anyway. So at this point, I'm going to pass on safety Keanu Neal. I'm not saying that no one's going to sign him. I'm just saying for right now, it just doesn't appear that would be the Falcons. So I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting. The next Falcons player to not be signed yet is wide receiver Russell Gage. And while Russell, hey, when he was with the Falcons, he did have his moments. I just don't think at this time with our current roster that he fits what we have. Small receiver, slot receiver, can get in and out, can run a drag really well, can find a hole in his own. Does have some acceleration, but we have 3 or 4 guys right now that can do that. And I don't know that Russell Gage is necessarily going to beat you downfield in regards to a 50-50 ball, right? If you're throwing it downfield 50 yards and somebody's got to go up and get it, I don't know that that's necessarily Russell Gage. Not that he can't do it, but I just don't see him as that type of a receiver. He's more an intermediate. I can get you 20 yards, I can get you 15 yards. I can run it across the middle. I can run it in the slot. but he is not necessarily someone that I would say, the Falcons need at this time. So I'm going to pass on him. Lastly, we got Calais Campbell. Now, Calais is interesting because I do think that the Falcons very well could use him. I think Calais would just be the I think he'd be the icing on the cake, if I'm being honest. Calais is, number one, a tremendous leader, a candidate for man of the year. He's somebody you want in the locker room. He is a towering giant. He literally towers above everyone. I think he's 6'8", still in great shape, still large, still huge, great run stopper. I have nothing bad to say about him. As a matter of fact, I think between he and Bud Dupree, they had the most sacks last year for the Falcons. So if there was anyone on this list that I did want the Falcons to re-sign, it'd be Calais Campbell. Will they? That's another story. Don't know. Not really sure. Every now and then, Jesse, Falcons safety, Jesse will hint at, the Falcons signing another pass rusher. Could that be Calais Campbell? It could be. Not sure that now. I believe they may have given away his number. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But it could be Calais Campbell. It could not be. I am hoping so. I really am. I'd love to see Calais come back. And according to Jesse Bates, there is a chance that we do sign another defensive end or another defensive lineman. So I'm holding out hope for that. Do the Falcons care about my opinion? They don't. And nor should they. But again, of the former Falcons on this list, I'm going to go with Calais Campbell being our best candidate. Hopefully we signed him. If so, I think that just puts us over the top. And I legitimately think you can go ahead and book not only a playoff spot, but maybe a first round victory. I think the Falcons are going to be that good. I think the Falcons this year are going to be an offensive juggernaut. I think it's going to be very difficult to keep up with them. I mean, think about it. You already had weapons like Drake and Kyle and Bijan and Tyler. Now you add to that Mooney. Now you add to that Rondale Moore. Now you add to that and on and on and on and on. And oh, by the way, you have Kirk Cousins, who typically throws for 4,500 yards per season. He was on pace last year to throw for 5,000 with a lesser team. So I say all that to say our offense is going to be really good. You add Calais to our defense, and you might legitimately have something. Am I predicting Super Bowl? Not yet, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. So again, I would love to get Calais Campbell. Doesn't mean it'll happen. But let's move forward. So what else happened this weekend, right? Ike Hilliard was interviewed, and he had some glowing things to say really about 10 of his 14 or 11 of his 14 receivers. I kind of highlighted 3 or 4. You'll see why once we go through it. But his comment on Drake London was, we don't see Drake as just a jump ball guy. We're going to see more routes from him, more isolations underneath, and in the intermediate passing game, right? Now, if you read that, if you really read that, what that means is Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore are probably going to be downfield. Maybe Kyle Pitts too. But specifically, Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore are going to run routes that pull the defense deep. And you're going to run Drake on intermediate 20 yards, 15-yard routes. And that's going to be there all day. And it's going to be wide open. Why is it going to be wide open? Well, you can't double team everyone. And number 2, if you got Darnell Mooney downfield, if you've got Darnell Mooney downfield, if you've got Rondale Moore downfield, well, who are you going to double cover? So either Kyle's going to be wide open, Drake's going to be wide open, or maybe a check down to Bijan for about 20 yards. But either way, you can't cover everybody. That's kind of what I draw from that. About Darnell Mooney, he said, well, he's a down the field player, yards per catch guy. He's an excellent route runner. He's very, very instinctive, great hands, great after the catch. So again, that to me says you're going to run him on 9 routes. You're going to run him on post patterns. He's going to be downfield. right? That's his job, to just draw coverage downfield. Rondale Moore, for a guy that's that fast and then be able to play the receiver position instead of being a gadget guy, there are so many more things that he can put on tape that I think people are going to be excited about as well. That to me says two things. Number one, they didn't utilize him to his fullest capacity in Arizona, which is where he's from. And it's interesting that he says that, because part of Rondale Moore's frustration was just the check downs and the wide receiver screens. And he felt like he could do so much more than that. And from my understanding, he was frustrated with management as to why they didn't give him that opportunity, which again is probably why they traded him for Ritter, being a third-round quarterback. That makes sense now. Essentially, when we found out about the trade, I'm thinking, wait a minute, Rondale Moore, who is a speed guy, can catch, very good, can make plays. Why would you trade him for Ritter, who to this point is unproven? Doesn't mean that he can't develop into a great quarterback. It just means to this point, he has not caught on yet. And to me, that wasn't apples to apples. But seeing that and hearing some other things, it really seemed like for Arizona, it was a change of scenery. This guy doesn't fit into our system here. And it may have been the same thing for Ritter. Hey, this guy doesn't fit into our system. We're going to go ahead and move him to Arizona, where maybe he can be better. He can fit in better. They have a system that's geared to his skill set, so to speak. And it makes sense. Lastly, Casey Washington, who was, I believe, our last pick. But here's what Ike Hilliard, our receivers coach, had to say about him. He says, he's a kid that's extremely tough, really, really good hand-eye coordination, strong hands. I would speak for all of us in saying that we're pleased with where he is right now, but there's room for growth there. Now, does that mean that he makes the team? Does that mean that he makes the 53? I don't know, but he kind of spoke glowingly about him. And again, he spoke about others. I just highlighted these four. But it could be very much, I've been hearing good things about Casey from multiple people. I've been hearing good things about Casey from people who have seen him live. So I would not be surprised if Casey Washington makes the team. From my understanding, does very well at contested catching, meaning he's down the field, it's 50, 60, 70 yards. It's a jump ball. He can go up and get it and bring it down most of the time. A lot of times it's not something you can teach. I mean, you can't teach instinct, right? So, maybe Casey Washington is someone to watch for the future. Don't know, but I just thought that was interesting in regards to those comments. So, next on what happened with the Falcons over the weekend. David Onyemata, according to one NFL reporter, is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. And you know what? I would tend to agree with him. Last year, I think what hurt the Falcons defense the most, mind you, is when Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata were injured. Now, Grady went out before David, and you could see the impact that Grady not being there had. You could see it. It seemed like quarterbacks had more time. It seemed like they could run the ball a little easier. But when David went out, you could really see it. There was no run stopper. It was just again, a couple games, especially where we got blown out, we couldn't stop the run. We couldn't rush the passer. We couldn't do anything. And a lot of that can be attributed to David Onyemata and or Grady Jarrett. But specifically, for David Onyemata, last year he had 35 quarterback pressures and 4 sacks. Again, 35 quarterback pressures and 4 sacks. He gets it done, right? He gets it done. You don't hear about him a lot around the NFL. You don't see him on commercials, but a very, 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 very sound technical defensive lineman. very good defensive linemen. And I think this year is probably going to be one of the best from a Falcons perspective that we've ever seen, because I just think our defensive line is going to be tremendous, right? We got Grady coming back. We got David Onyemata coming back. Lest we not forget we have Eddie Goldman. And if Eddie can stay, and I know some of you guys out there are laughing because you're thinking, okay, it's the runaway defensive tackle. And it could be, you know. Eddie could have another epiphany and be like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I'm going to do this again to the Falcons for the third time. I'm out. He could be. He could very well do that. Or he could be exactly who we thought he was when we signed him. He could be great. What are you getting with Eddie? You're getting a run stopper. You're getting a definitive run stopper and somebody that can occasionally rush the passer. At a minimum, he's going to draw double teams because he's a mammoth of a man, right? You add in there the defensive ends that we got, Braylon Trice, some of the others. You really got you've got a great defensive line, in my opinion. In my opinion, the Falcons' defensive line is probably going to be top 10, if not top 5. And their front seven is probably going to be top 10, if not top 5. So I think, again, Falcons' success is going to come down to whether or not David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, basically whether certain pieces or certain personnel can stay healthy. If Grady and David stay healthy the entire year, we're good. You don't have to worry about us. We are good. If they don't, in this scenario, in this season, I still think we'll be okay because we have so much depth on the defensive line. We have Kentavious Street. We have a lot of guys. We've got Ruka Arroyo. We've got Brandon Dorlus. We've got Taquan Graham. We've got LaCale London. Again, Kentavious Street. So one of those guys is probably not going to make the team, right? There's going to be a very decent Atlanta Falcons defensive lineman that is probably going to be snatched off our practice squad because our defensive line has that much depth, right? So I think, again, I think David Onyemata is very much underrated as a player. So I would agree with that. I think we can look forward to a great season. And I'm looking forward to see what we can accomplish in the time that we've been given, right? I'm really excited about this upcoming Falcons year because I really think, and I haven't felt this way in a long time, that we have most of the pieces we need to make a run. You could argue maybe strong safety, there may be some ambiguity in regards to the second and third corner, but outside of that, everything else is pretty much in place, I would say, right? You look at the offensive line, there are really no weaknesses there. You'd like someone a little better at pass blocking than McQuarrie. I'm sorry. But he's an excellent run blocker. And I think if you stick a tight end to the right of him, we will be fine. And I think that's exactly what Zach Robinson and the Falcons will do. So again, I think that we have the makings at a minimum of a playoff team. But I think if things go right, if things go the way we expect them to, I think this team can make a deep run. Will they? Well, that's why they play the game. And again, that remains to be seen. But I think this team definitely has it in them to make a deep run. Looked at a projected 2025 mock draft where they had the Falcons picking 22, which basically means they made the playoff and went out in the first round. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Falcons are going to surprise a lot of people next year. I think the NFL needs to look out. I think we have a very good team, and I think that the league is really underestimating us. And I think that, Falcons will win at least 11, maybe 12 games next year. I think they'll win a first round playoff victory. Now, where they go from that, I don't know. I'm not willing to say that. I'm not willing to predict that. But I think this team will have a successful year. Last but not least, Falcons have added 4 new limited partners to their ownership group. I thought this was interesting because how often does this happen, right? So you got Rosalind Brewer, who I believe is has been an executive with Walmart and a couple of other stores. Dominic Dawes, who was an Olympian. Will Packer, who was a filmmaker. And Rashawn Williams, who is a capital venturist. So I thought that was interesting. What impact that will have on the Falcons, I am really not sure, but I think it's great when we get to see young folks who have, some of them, not all of them, some of them come from humble beginnings to really ascend and get to the point where they can actually buy a stake in a team. I think it's great. So I was excited to see that and looking forward to see what they can and will bring to our Falcon ownership group, and just excited to see it. So I think that's pretty good. All right. What else happened over the weekends? Well, we did discuss a potential trade of the Falcons for Justin Jefferson, right? And received a lot of feedback from this offline where, oh, you're crazy. You're crazy if you think we shouldn't do it. Like, why wouldn't you go and trade for Justin Jefferson? Like, what's that about? And again, as I stated last night, I think Justin Jefferson is probably one of the best, if not the best receiver in the game right now. But guess what? He's also one of the most expensive. And if you do trade for him, you're going to have to extend him. That's probably going to be a condition of the trade, right? At a minimum, he's going to get $30 million a year. They're saying that he may be the highest paid receiver ever, which doesn't really last long. I mean, someone will come along after him maybe a year later or 2 years later, and they'll dwarf that. But the bottom line is the Falcons still have some guys that they need to re-sign, right? I don't know that they have the bandwidth to sign Justin Jefferson for $35 million a year and keep AJ and keep Drake and keep Kyle and keep some other guys. So the question becomes, A, what would you have to give up for Justin Jefferson? The number 1 pick. The number 1 receiver in the league. Well, I'd say at least 2 or 3 draft picks, right? Maybe a player, but at least 2 or 3 draft picks. You still got to pay him the 30 to 35 million. We don't know what the Falcons cap situation will be next year or the year after that. And oh, by the way, we kind of have a tampering investigation that's going on right now, right? As a matter of fact, the NFL is saying that decision could be rendered sometime this week. So what happens if the NFL, who's embarrassed, by the way, so sorry for that, guys. What happens if the NFL, who's very embarrassed by this, decides that the Falcons need to lose a first-round pick? What happens with that? Where do we go with that? Well, what that means is we won't have a first-round pick next year. We won't have a first-round pick to trade, which means if we want to get Justin Jefferson, we now probably have to trade 3 or 4 or potentially 5 picks, definitely a first-round pick in 2026, and it could be most of our draft next year. Now, we're in good standing, but I don't think we're in a standing to where we can afford to just not pick anyone next year, right? We could lose 2 draft picks next year. And you guys are probably thinking, there's no way that can happen. It absolutely could happen. Again, guys, the NFL was embarrassed by this. They were embarrassed by this, right? And lest we not forget, let's go back to Ray Rice. Why do I bring it up? It was a disgusting incident. And I definitely do not advocate for abuse of any kind on any particular entity, especially women. But I bring it up just for this example. The NFL saw the tape originally, and they knew what Ray Rice had done, and they issued a punishment. But then, right, when the tape got out to the national media, when certain lobbyist groups got involved, when people started talking boycott, well, they came back and gave him a much more severe punishment because they were embarrassed, right? I love Kirk Cousins. I really do. I think he'll be a great Falcon quarterback, but he did kind of stumble his way into admitting that the Falcons did tamper. And he did it on national TV, or at least it aired on national TV. And the NFL was embarrassed. So to say that they're not going to respond severely, you're kidding yourself. So the Falcons could lose a first and a second round draft pick next year. Why is this important? Well, if we think about it, it makes that move to draft Michael Penix this year even more savvy, even more genius. Because if you don't have a first round and a second pick next year, you probably weren't going to get a quarterback that's worth anything. I mean, really think about it, right? You probably weren't going to get a quarterback. Secondly, if you don't have a first round and a second round next year, how are you going to trade for Justin Jefferson? So, in my humble opinion, I don't think that's the move that the Falcons should do. They could do it. And let me tell you something. If they did do it, if they were able to do it this year and keep all the pieces that they have, that offense would be unstoppable. It literally would be unstoppable. I mean, you're talking probably 35 points a game, right? You got Drake. You got Justin, who's now the number one receiver. You got Drake London. You got Kyle Pitts. You got Bijan Robinson. You got Tyler Algier. You got Darnell Mooney. You got a litany of other weapons. You can't double everybody. And Kurt is accurate. Kurt knows defenses. Kurt knows how to identify who to throw to. That is going to be quite an offense to stop. That's probably going to rival the 2016 Falcons. Maybe even the greatest show on turf, the Rams, if you could get them. And let me tell you something. That would be great. That would be great. If we could do that, like, again, that offense would be tremendous. And maybe we do go to a Super Bowl. Hell, maybe we do win a Super Bowl. But that next year, you're probably going to have to blow up the team. You're going to have to probably get rid of Drake. You're probably going to have to get rid of Kyle. You're not going to re-sign them, right? And maybe you don't have to get rid of them because I think they're still playing on their rookie deals. But at some point, if you sign Justin, you're not going to keep AJ and you're not going to keep Drake. You're not going to keep at least two of those guys, or maybe one. I don't know. So it's really, if you do trade for them, you better win either that first or second year you have Kurt. You better go all the way to the Super Bowl. Because to the extent that you don't, now in later years, you kind of have to dismantle the team because of the contract that you set up with Justin. And I think with Matt and Julio, the Falcons kind of learned maybe don't want to do that, right? Now you could argue, maybe they gave Matt and Julio those contracts maybe a little later in their football lives than they should. You could argue that, and that would be fair. But as they say, it's not about the money. It's about the money. You're not going to keep these guys if you don't pay them. So ultimately, do I think the Falcons do it? I don't. That doesn't mean anything. If anything, the Falcons have shown it's that they do not subscribe to conventional thinking when it comes to players, right? So they are not afraid to do whatever, wherever, however they need to do to make this team better. So they could trade for Justin Jefferson. I just don't see it happening, and I don't know why the Vikings would do it. Now, I understand that he wants a new contract, but you didn't sign Kirk Cousins. And I'm thinking part of the reason you didn't sign Kirk Cousins is because you were going to sign Justin Jefferson. So to kind of double down on that and not sign him after you let Kirk Cousins go, I feel like maybe you're letting your fans down. I don't know. Either way, we'll see. So we're about at time. It's been 30 minutes. Falcon fans, thank you for joining me. Again, hit the like and subscribe button. You can go to Terry Wilson for my ATL Sports 1 on YouTube. Again, the ATL in the For My ATL Sports is capitalized. Please go to Terry Wilson for my ATL Sports 1 on YouTube and like and subscribe. And hey, if you feel the notion, tell your friends about it. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for giving me a little time to talk about the Falcons, and you guys have an amazing day.